in terms of the connections to Australia, those cables are not Telstra's.
One of the cables is partly owned via Reach. Telstra owns part of the Reach company or consortium. So it does have a sort of interlocking ownership of one of those cables. But we have, I believe, long-term leases on capacity. You tend to buy capacity as you're sort of, it's like leasing a flat. You tend to lease it for 20 years of so much bandwidth across there.
Telecom, one of the people I've spoken to Telecom have claimed that the reason that Southern Cross doesn't have a lot more capacity than it does is that they get charged too much to interconnect at the other end.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's, again, I think that's just a price issue. I'm not sure that's necessarily, I wouldn't know if that's true or not, but I mean, as a telco, you don't have a choice. If you use bandwidth, as everyone is doing, and you use capacity, you have to upgrade networking capacity. You don't have a choice. You can't. We don't throttle people. No. So the number of times I've upgraded rings in our core network for no extra revenue is about 3 to 4 times a year. You know, it just depends. Right. And we've seen the growth in traffic exponential nearly. So when the engineers come to me and say, gee, we're running out of capacity for internet usage and bandwidth, I need to go another 10 gig on whatever ring it is of our network. And I say, well, where's the business case and the revenue? They all say, well, you know, just we need it.
So I mean, so the difference there is to sort of make this a little bit clearer is between international and local traffic. So there's a lot of local traffic within the New Zealand network, and potentially a lot in the business sort of area. But when consumers are using content, they're almost invariably going offshore. Aren't
Correct.
they?
Yeah.
And they're going to the likes of Google and Facebook and I mean, TradeMe is locally hosted, but most of the large content servers and the large content farms and clouds and stuff are all offshore. IPTV, I think, is one of the exceptions to that, in that it's locally cached and is often locally delivered. Is there potential for other caching technologies to be employed to address these issues?
Oh, look, I think they can today. The issue is not so much technical issues, as I understand it. The issues revolve around the policies and practices of these multinational companies. And I won't pick one out, but let's just say a number of names: Google, YouTube, you know, whatever it might be. They have some pretty I was going to say bureaucratic, but some pretty strenuous requirements when organisations such as ourselves suggest let's cache here for our network and our users. And they're not the easiest people in the world to deal with as well. And so I think what we have is a revolution throughout the world with people accessing and using the internet in massively different ways to perhaps how it was first envisaged. You have organisations, Google being a fantastic example, and I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on those, going from zero to one of the biggest, if not the biggest, content and internet companies in the world, who clearly will have a global strategy about how they want to make money and how they want to distribute the system. So I think in terms of technology, there will be more and more caching onshore in any country, because the cost will always be lower domestically.
Do we need perhaps to encourage the building of large data centres in New Zealand somehow? I mean, is that part of the solution to making UFB make sense?
Yeah, there's a whole different situation about making UFB make sense in terms of content and in terms of caching. But the data centres are built. I mean, in terms of the technology, the ability to store terabytes. You know, I have sitting at home a 1 terabyte storage disk, which is no bigger than a sort of small kitchen tin, really. It just sort of sits there and you stare at it and say, gee, there's a terabyte sitting there, I don't believe it. So I don't think that's the issue. The issue comes down to business cases and strategies. The issues come down to vested interests, whether they be movie studios or whoever it is, and people who have made investments wanting a return on those. And my view is we just haven't worked through all those, and the parts of the industry haven't sorted it out. And it's just work in progress because we're in the middle of a revolution.
What about regulation on some of the international links? I mean, if the capacity is there and it's a pricing issue, then is there Commerce Commission issues there?
Well, I think, I think it's an issue of regulation should only be used where there are bottlenecks. I don't understand enough about regulation law, but there's certainly no capacity bottleneck, and there's certainly no denial of opportunity. There's just a price to be paid. And perhaps one day the Commerce Commission will look at that, but again they would probably argue there's no market failure because people are entering that space now, to provide alternative services such as Pacific, Spin and Cordia.
They're discussing it, whether the builders are.
Well, that's true, but the network's been built, it cost a lot of money. To what degree there's been a payback, and the space will be filled in one way or the other because the demand and the growth will go and the pressure will grow.
Okay. Coming back to IPTV, one of the discussions that we've seen in terms of the UFB initiative has been the release of a bit of pricing information which has priced IPTV delivery at $5 a month. I mean, Telstra is positioning itself as an IPTV provider. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's true, but I sigh a little because it's TV's sort of old world, It's what we, I spend a lot of time thinking about this, and I probably spend more time watching it occur in my household, which is, I have two very high users of internet for multidisciplinary content. I have one very agitated and irritated son at the moment who depends heavily on the PlayStation portal for his connection with all his mates around the world, because that's his social out there. And I walk in and say, "Who's that person in your game?" He says, "That's Yuki from Japan, and he's done so and so today and seen his mother or gone to school or whatever." To him, that's a screen and that's entertainment in the same way that he walks in the other room and there's a TV program on their screen and entertainment. What we're seeing is a convergence of multimedia content, ranging from anime cartoons, which my daughter's a massive watcher of, which are not made by studios but can be made by anyone and studios, through to movies or whatever it might be. Programs like Sunny in Philadelphia or Sunshine in Philadelphia, grew out of an internet one-off trial by a group of guys before DeVito and Fox, I think, brought it. So I sort of think IPTV is one content delivery, and at the moment it's the one that people relate to. But I also think that my daughter watches perhaps 65% of her TV online on broadband. The rest of her TV she watches is on a T-box or PVR, or on CDs or DVDs she buys. So she doesn't watch TV anymore in the conventional way, and neither do we, because we time shift as well. So yes, it is something we have to provide, because TV and content is the killer issue for UFB. And that's the issue that the government hasn't addressed. And again hasn't kept up with the issue of this whole convergence of internet to TV to computers to screens or whatever, or games, whatever it might be.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Freeth. That's the first part of our discussion. When we come back to the next part, we'll be talking about how we get to the traffic jam a little faster.